Okay, so we're going to get back now and we're going to look at the procedure for going through a trial. But first of all, just to give you some definitions of some vocab words that we're going to need to know. If we're going to have a trial, oftentimes we're going to have what are called jurors. And jurors are those that serve on a jury. Um, these people are chosen one of two ways, either voter registration or people that have a driver's license. And this is done totally at random. If your name is chosen, then you will have what is called jury duty. And you'll be on jury duty for a set number of days. If during the time period that you're on jury duty, a case comes up where they need to have a jury, then you will go in and you will be asked a series of questions. And depending on how you answer your questions, the lawyers who will be involved will say, no, this person needs to go. We don't want them on the jury. Or, yes, this person stays and then you are on the jury. If that is the case, then you have to serve on the jury. And depending on the case might only last one day. It could last 1 week. It could last 2 weeks. Doesn't matter. And if you have to miss work, then your work has to let you go. You do get paid while you're on jury duty. It's not a lot, but you do get something. And when you're done, your job has to retain you, which means they can't let you go or you can't get fired because you're on jury, because you're a juror. And if you're a juror, you get called. I mentioned this word. You have what is called jury duty, and this is when one receives
Hi. 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 Hi.
and then once you're on jury duty and they go through the entire process, and we will look at what that entire process is, and then you have to make a decision. That is what is known as a verdict.
Hi. 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 Hi.
And then after verdict, now you might be thinking, well, what happens if the jury can't make up their mind? Well, that is what's called a hung jury. And then during the whole process, witnesses are going to be called to the witness stand. And when they get called to the witness stand, they are giving what is called a testimony. And then once the person has been asked questions by one attorney, the other attorney or lawyer gets to ask them more questions. And then let's say that the jury reaches a verdict and the verdict does not go your way, then you can file an appeal. And an appeal is when there's going to be a review of a court's decision. You're going to look over it and see if everything was done the way it was supposed to be done, if there was something that was mishandled, anything like that. It's kind of like a last-ditch effort to try to find a person who's guilty, not guilty. Okay, so we're going to go back now and we're going to look at the trial procedure. So this is the trial procedure. First of all, there's going to be an opening statement. What's going to happen is that first the prosecution, they are the ones that are trying to find the person guilty. They're going to state, this is why we are in court today. This is what this person did, and I'm going to prove that they are guilty. They're not going to show all of their cards at this point. They're just going to, this is like an overview of everything. And then once the prosecution has given an opening statement, then the defense or the lawyer for the person who's accused of the crime, then they are going to say why their defendant is not guilty. After that, the prosecution is going to call their first witnesses. And so they will call them up, and the person will come up to the witness stand, and then the bailiff or a sheriff or whomever it may be, depending on where you're at, will walk up to the witness, and they will have you raise your right hand and place your left hand on the Bible, and they will say, do you swear to tell the whole truth, all the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? And you'll say, yes, and then you sit down, and the prosecuting attorney will start asking you questions. When they are done, then the defense attorney gets to cross-examine you. They get to ask you questions, and then the prosecution may re-examine the same witness if they choose. And then the prosecution is going to go through all of their witnesses. They may only have a couple, they could have a dozen, they could have 2 dozen. It all depends on the case. And no two cases are the same. Then, when the prosecution has called all of the witnesses they want to, the prosecution looks at the judge and they will tell the judge, Judge, prosecution rests. So then the judge will look at the defense and they'll say, tell the defense attorney, okay, now you may call your witnesses to the stand. So now we're going to go through this process. Now the defense is going to call their witnesses, and some of these and most of these are probably going to be different people. So the defense calls their witnesses, and then the prosecution gets to cross-examine just like the defense got to cross-examine, and then the defense can re-examine, and then after that, the defense is going to rest, and then the judge is going to give instructions to the jury. And after the judge does that, the defense is going to give a closing argument. And basically, this is going to be a summary of everything that has happened. The defense attorney is going to go back and they're going to look over all of the evidence that they feel helped prove that that their client is innocent. And then after the defense gets done with that, then the prosecution can give a rebuttal, which simply means they're going to give their own argument. They're going to say, well, the defense said this is why their client is not guilty. Well, I'm going to tell you why the client is guilty, and look at all of this evidence that was presented. And then after that, the judge is going to give the jury their final set of instructions, and then the jury is going to deliberate, which means they're going to retire to a little room, and while they are there, then they will go back and they will look over all of the evidence that was presented, and then they have to make a decision. They have to decide that yes, the person is guilty, or no, they're not guilty. And remember, if it is a civil case, okay, in a civil court case, the jury, if there is one, because not all civil cases have a jury, must only reach a majority vote, a decision So in a civil court case, the jury, if there is one, must only reach a majority vote for a decision. In a criminal court case, the jury must reach a unanimous verdict to find a person guilty. And if by chance the person that was standing trial is found guilty, then what's going to happen is the jury will reach a decision. The jury will be escorted back into the courtroom, and either the foreman of the jury will read the verdict. The foreman gives the decision, the verdict, to the bailiff, and the bailiff gives it to the judge, and they read the verdict, or sometimes the bailiff themselves. If that verdict is guilty, then the judge will say that this person is found guilty of this crime, and they will say sentencing will take place on, and then they will have a date, and then later the person comes back and they will find out what their sentence is. Obviously, it depends on what the crime is, but the person is not sentenced to jail the very day of the court case. That happens afterwards. Okay, that is it for all of your notes for this section.